Right, so the Board of Deputies of British Jews, supposedly representative of all British Jewry, who suddenly appeared on our screens whilst Jeremy Corbyn was leader of the Labour Party, didn't they? As a convenient media vehicle to run him down, effectively, and we all know how they did that, despite most of us, I dare say, never having heard of them up until then. But they are instead far more representative of Zionism and Zionist interests, Israeli interests, and indeed, after having attacked Labour so viciously for so long, accusing them of being racist, the now outgoing president of the BOD, Marie van der Zyl, has not only voiced her support for Starmer's version of the Labour Party, but actually now joined it. It's no secret that Starmer is, of course, a Zionist himself, without qualification in his own words. But how nailed on is that belief with such as van der Zyl now joining the Labour Party? And is it about time the BOD came clean about their being the only representative of British Jews, being only by their own say-so? And given so many Jewish people have been purged from Labour under Starmer, from the Labour Party, how can she say he's dealing with anti-Semitism with a straight face, that he's dealt with it? Or were all these Jews that have been expelled and suspended just the wrong sort then? Right, so the outgoing 48th President of the Board of Deputies of British Jews has, upon ending her 6-year tenure as President just last month, now joined the Labour Party under Keir Starmer. She's very impressed with him, you see. Their mutual pro-Israel proclivities, something they very much have in common. Here she is, for example, beaming to be photographed with Benjamin Netanyahu there. Shows her pro-Israeli interests are absolutely nailed on, and clearly Starmer's are as well. It is no exaggeration to refer to Marie van der Zyl as a pro-Israel extremist, frankly. She considers the Board of Deputies' reason for existence to be to promote a sympathetic understanding of Israel, which is quite something when they also claim to represent all British Jewry, though that is very much a self-appointed claim. Which is it that comes first, then, is what comes to my mind. A great many of this country's 290,000 people who identify as Jewish, for example the 50,000 or so Haredi Jews, Orthodox Jews, do not recognise the Board of Deputies, and in no small part could that be because of the BOD's pro-Israel leanings. The Haredis do not recognise the State of Israel. They are vehemently anti-Zionist. So how can the BOD possibly represent them? And this has been shown in no small part by Haredi Jews protesting against the Board of Deputies, one notable example being back in 2018, when they did so outside of the BOD's annual dinner, just to remind them that the BOD do not represent them, and despite their false claims that they do so. Jeremy Corbyn was, of course, painted as a vicious anti-Semite by the BOD in the run-up to the 2019 general election, but in reality he was just pro-Palestinian, well before the events of October 7th last year, and spoke of the need for there to be a peace resolution, and has done for years now. But sadly, many of the people of this country were still very much under the impression Palestinians were terrorists and Israel was the victim, all despite having been occupiers of Palestinian territory certainly since 1967, though many people will argue differently on the dates, the very creation of Israel being possible only via a land grab. But the mud stuck to Corbyn, and van der Zyl, well, she had plenty to say about him, plenty to say about all of that, even going on Israeli TV to talk about it, as this excerpt from the US Allgemeine Journal explains. UK Labour Party leader Jeremy Corbyn has declared war on the Jews, a top British Jewish leader said in a television interview on Tuesday. During an I24 news appearance, Marie van der Zyl, the president of the Board of Deputies of British Jews, said of the ongoing anti-Semitism scandals dogging Corbyn and his party, "We're feeling nervous. We're feeling anxious. We've never been in this situation. It's unprecedented. We are fighting this. We are insisting on the international definition of anti-Semitism being implemented in full," she added. "We want the show trial of Ian Austin stopped, and we want the numerous disciplinary actions that have been pending for years to be completed in a transparent way." Corbyn's hatred of Israel and Zionism, van der Zyl noted, runs so deep that he cannot separate that from anti-Semitism. Now, I'm sure we would all have remembered Corbyn declaring war on the Jews. I'm not altogether sure the jam-making vegetable botherer and pacifist would declare war on anybody, yet such was the claim made by van der Zyl, amongst others. The full interview is still there on YouTube, if you care to watch it all, the I24 channel, to get an idea of just how unhinged she was and continued to be, and how much more she actually said. But I think you get the gist. I will make note of one more thing from that interview, though. She was asked what reaction Theresa May had taken in speaking out for Israel and against what she purported Corbyn stood for. She couldn't sing the praises of May loudly enough. She said, "The government has accepted the international definition of anti-Semitism, and the Tories have always shown themselves to be friends to the Jewish community." Well, I bet that's news to the Jewish communities, plural, Marie, you understand. There's more than one of them, of course. You should know that, really, if you purport to represent all of them. At least one doesn't recognise the BOD, though, as representing them. Do remember that. But when the Tories' track record for bigotry and racism of all kinds is as long as your arm and then carries on some longer, it's a complete joke to speak of Corbyn as being a Jewish pariah because his hatred of Zionism means he can't separate that from anti-Semitism. Newsflash, lovey. They aren't the same, and in fact many would consider it to be anti-Semitic to claim they are the same, which you appear to be muddying the waters of there. Versus Theresa May, in whose mouth butter wouldn't melt, it would seem. Well, the worst thing she apparently ever did was run through some wheat fields, wasn't it? Windrush, anybody? Perhaps Van der Zyl agreed, though. Many of us would point to her tenure in continuing to ruin the country as far worse, but, you know, perspective, I suppose. Yet clearly Starmer is even more appealing than Theresa May is from a pro-Zionist perspective now, anyway, since Van der Zyl has now joined the Labour Party. Coming to you soon wearing a parachute as a future MP, maybe down the line, perhaps. Or was it just these warm words that convinced you that Starmer is absolutely the person for you?
I'm very clear. Israel must have that, does have that right to defend herself, and Hamas bears responsibility.
A siege is appropriate? Cutting off power, cutting off water?
Well, I think that Israel does have that right. It is an ongoing situation. Obviously, everything should be done within international law, but I don't want to step away from the sort of core principles that Israel has a right to defend herself and Hamas bears responsibility for these terrorist acts. And I would call on all responsible states, particularly Middle East responsible states, to call this out for what it is and to stand with the world in condemning, utterly condemning these actions by Hamas.
Yes, we're not forgetting that one. We're never likely to forget it anytime soon. I'd love for Marie van der Zyl to explain how that's justified, wouldn't you? At any rate, the Jewish Chronicle has, of course, gushed about her joining Starmer's Labour. They've said, "The former president of the Board of Deputies, Marie van der Zyl, has joined the Labour Party after stepping down from her role at the end of May after 6 years in office. She said she had never previously joined a political party, but was now proud to join Labour. I feel that Keir Starmer has stuck to his words and done everything possible to deal with anti-Semitism," she said. Well, I don't know about you, but that last line certainly creased me up. I feel Starmer has stuck to his words. He's not done that a day in his leadership, and the only reason his pro-Israel leanings haven't shifted is because the Israel lobby are his financial backers. The BOD, perhaps that Theresa May viewpoint is not at all surprising, has largely also been seen as a conservative body as well as a Zionist one. However, clearly that might be shifting, due in no small part to the shift in the party, the Labour Party under Starmer, now becoming a Conservative party itself. But the new president of the Board of Deputies, for example, a chap called Phil Rosenberg, is a former Labour councillor in the borough of Camden, which, well, just happens to lie in Keir Starmer's constituency of Holborn and St Pancras. And Marie van der Zyl's husband, Adrian Cohen, has become the senior vice president of the BOD now. He also happens to be the chair of Labour Friends of Israel. Just how close are the BOD and Starmer's Labour now? Well, getting closer and closer, it seems. What Keir Starmer has overseen has been a massive purge of Jewish people from the left of the party who don't subscribe to the drivel spouted by the BOD or by LFI or any other pro-Israel entities, as Labour has now become and continues to become ever more so. Van der Zyl stands as a sign that Labour has changed, as Starmer keeps saying, but changed for the worse, not the better. That the party has moved on from the Corbyn era where real change for us was on offer, but where racism was actually being drummed out and dealt with properly. But duped as this country was into believing that man was a racist, the change her support brings about is against anything changing politically. But as long as government aligns itself with Israel, that is all that matters now, it seems. More Jewish people have been thrown out of Labour under Starmer than any other Labour leader ever. And in fact, nothing quite underlines the fact that Starmer has gone down this road so far in appeasement only of Jewish people who are Zionists, and indeed non-Jewish people who are Zionists, than a Jewish man choosing to stand against Keir Starmer in this election, in his seat, to set Labour on a different course if they have to select a new leader in order to form a government by taking Starmer out at this general election. Toppling Keir Starmer is a huge ask, but Andrew Feinstein, a former South African ANC MP from the Nelson Mandela era, now living in Starmer's patch, has the will and the political wherewithal to do it. You can find out a little bit more about him in this video recommendation here if you've not got much information on him yet. Perhaps consider getting involved in his campaign after watching it if you're able to. And I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.